Thank you for coming, Rufus and Emma. So while I was researching the policies and procedures on separation and termination within your organisation, most of the performance management procedures were clearly documented and easy to understand, which is really good for people like myself to know your expectations of the employees and for the employees to understand your expectations of them and their roles as well. And it means that should an employee need to be disciplined or performance managed, they would probably be familiar with the process before it ever started, and they would know that, once an issue had come up or a problem had come up, they'd know the steps that would need to be followed. So, they then have clear choices on whether to comply or whether this is basically going to lean towards a goodbye scenario. So, what it also does when things are easy to understand and clearly documented is that it enables the process to be seen as transparent, which means that it's fair to all the employees, and it helps the organisation not be leaning towards maybe an issue in the future for discrimination or in some way where they think they've been victimised or picked on or something like that. However, I would like to see a lot more information about the process and the steps undertaken, possibly in the employee handbook, because even though it was quite clear and concise in the information I read that was directed towards managers and people who are in management positions, there wasn't an awful lot in the employee handbook that showed the employees exactly what steps would be taken. And you don't need to go into an awful lot of detail because I don't want to intimidate them or frighten them before they even start, because this is a handbook that you give out to new employees when they start. But in the spirit of transparency and being fair to all, it's probably good for them to understand how these policies work and the way that they're going to work should something come up that needs to be addressed. Makes sense? Yeah. Now, in terms of, so that's one thing. I'd like the employees to have a little bit more information, not a lot, but a little bit more. I would also like to see the managers get some training to better equip themselves with the knowledge and skills required to manage the process involved with termination and separation. There's an awful lot to this, and there's a lot of potholes that can cause a lot of problems down the road. Employees, if they think they've been unfairly treated, if they think they've been discriminated against, they may start some sort of litigious action that can really damage an organisation, and they're the sort of risks that we face when we go forward with these sorts of processes. And that's the kind of thing that I'd like the managers to be more aware of. I'd like them to be able to recognise, to start with, if there is an issue or problem. So they need to know what they're looking at. This is a health hazard, or this is a safety issue, or this is a problem with our productivity, or this is just an issue that the organisation will not put up with. But they need to recognise that there's a problem to start with and know what they're looking at. They need to know what to do or who to contact to start with, where to get support. They need to understand the litigious aspects of things like this. Fair Work Australia puts out very specific terms about the way that people should be treated in the workplace, and processes and procedures that need to be in place to be fair to both the employer and the employee when we're dealing with something that may lead to
at least to make them aware of the basic things.
Legal requirements are really, really important. If we don't understand, if the managers don't understand what's required of them with the legal aspects, that can cause a lot of problems. That really can cause some, employees and whatnot trying to sue us down the road, and we don't want that.
So, do you see any risk if we don't implement the new strategies?
I do in terms of legal things. I also do in terms of management not having the confidence to go ahead with contacting other people who might support them and that sort of thing. If managers aren't really aware of what they're even looking at, if they sort of see that everything's kind of working okay, they might not actually recognise that there is a problem that's going to lead to more issues down the road, which of course is going to make it much bigger. Escalate. Yeah.
And
what issues do you see in implementing the new policy and procedure?
The issues that I see in implementing it basically are education issues. So any time that we start educating people on new policies and procedures, you need to make them aware of why you're doing it, and then pretty much what you're doing. So they need to be properly trained, they need to understand why we're doing this, and it needs to be documented, you need to make sure that it is properly understood, so that what we're doing today can carry on for many months and years and whatnot to come, and can be changed over time to meet the needs of the organisation as well.
So it does get amended from time to time.
It needs to be amended. Any organisation is going to change when Fair Work Australia changes their rules or the way that they need things done. The organisation will change, hopefully. As the organisation gets bigger, we're going to have to perform with a bigger workforce and a more varied workforce. So it will change over time as the organisation changes.
Roughly, what sort of cost can be expected from these changes?
The sorts of costs that we can expect, when we're talking at training managers and maybe changing the employee handbook, training the managers, there's going to be some costs possibly when we start training them with outsourced educators. So when we get people in who are going to train them, we're going to need to pay them. We may need to pay for the managers' downtime. So, if they can't possibly be trained within work time, we're going to need to pay them overtime to train them, things like that. There's not really much in the way of materials or anything we need to train them with that's going to be a great cost, but the actual educators themselves are going to need to be paid. The employees also need to be more aware of the way that we're doing things, and it needs to be communicated to them, not just for the new employees in an employee handbook. It also needs to be communicated to the existing employees as well. So toolbox talks and things would be happening with the employees, maybe weekly, I would think, by the managers once they're trained up to do so, once they're trained to communicate to the employees and what they're communicating to the employees effectively as well.
You commented about external training. What kind of training would that be?
I would like to have maybe a representative from maybe Fair Work or Human Resources, those sorts of people that deal with industrial relations and that sort of thing, to come in and maybe offer some opinion and some ideas and some training on that sort of thing. We would need trainers that are specialised in training management to deal with management issues. So the way that they communicate to their employees and the things that they communicate to them that are going to work with what we need them to learn as well. The discrimination aspects, of the legal aspects of the separation, termination, and getting people through performance management aspect of it. We need to they'll need to know about confidentiality. They need to know about accurate documentation, really very detailed and accurate documentation, and the safe storage of that sort of documentation. So, not to sort of fling it around in the lunchroom and that sort of thing, but to make sure that everything is accurate and detailed and stored properly, so that
To be in order.
Well, yeah, in the end, when we need to maybe use this documentation, it can be. But those sorts of things is stuff that management needs to be trained on.
And what time frame do you think would be implemented?
Well, I'd like to see this implemented as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see the managers and whatnot. We need to sit down and decide exactly what the organisation needs to train them on. But in terms of separation, termination, performance management, that sort of thing, I need to start with the basics and sort of flesh it out from there. I'd like to see that happen within the next few weeks, so that we can start drifting it down. So we start with the management, and then they start talking to their employees in the form of 10-minute toolbox talks and things like that, just before they start work, maybe in a break here and there when productivity allows. That's what I'd like. So that by the end of, say, a month or 6 weeks, depending on how we're going with time allowances, we can pretty much have this wrapped up, and everybody will be aware and hopefully aware of it and doing what they're supposed to be doing within that sort of time. So at this stage, you're reasonably happy for me to keep going on this, and we'll get back in another week and discuss what you'd like them trained on and the priorities and how quickly and how much they need to know.
That would be good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you.